Hi there, and welcome back to Out There with Dean. Now, if you've ever stared down the barrel of a 14 to 15 hour flight and thought, how am I going to survive this? This video is for you. Today, I'm going to take a look at a 15-hour flight that I took with Air Canada in their Premium Economy suite. So stick with me and we'll go through the experience. So, as I mentioned, today I'm going to go through what my experience was like with Air Canada and their Premium Economy suite flying between Sydney, Australia and Vancouver, Canada. The second part of the leg was actually to Las Vegas, so Vancouver to Las Vegas, but I'm specifically talking about the Sydney to Vancouver route at the moment. So this leg is actually one of the longest flights you can do without actually having to stop. I think the longest flight at the moment at the time of recording this is one of Singapore Air's Singapore to New York, JFK, and that's around 18 or 19 hours. So this is getting up there, and I think being in premium economy certainly helps with this large amount of flying. So for a bit of context, I'm quite a tall person. So I'm around 198 centimeters tall. So in Imperial, I think that's around 6'5", 6'5" and a half. So seat comfort is something that I value a lot. Being a big human, and I'm also quite wide, a normal economy seat can be challenging. So I'd originally booked an economy class ticket, and through Air Canada's bidding or upgrade system, I was able to bid, and I was successful in my bid to be upgraded to the Premium Economy suite or Premium Economy class. This really made the flight worth it and made it a whole lot easier than it otherwise would have been. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the seat configuration, what I loved about the experience. There was quite a lot to like about this experience. What I would change, or some of the feedback I guess I have for Air Canada, and some really important tips for Australians flying into the United States and flying via Vancouver. So as I mentioned, I was flying into Las Vegas, but the route that I'm going to really focus on here is the journey between Sydney and Vancouver. That's the section that we're able to take premium economy. For context, actually we took business class between Vancouver and Las Vegas for that 2.5 hour, 3 hour flight. But really what I want to focus on in this video is that premium economy experience, because that's really where we got a lot more of an experience and was able to really digest that class of cabin. So I guess let's start off with the cabin itself. On this aircraft, Air Canada's Premium Economy cabin was configured 242 with 24 Premium Economy seats in total. Straight away, the smaller cabin size really makes a difference. It feels calmer, it's more personal, and it's far less chaotic than the typical economy experience. What's great is the seats are quite a lot wider than the economy seats. There's noticeably more legroom. As I mentioned, I'm very tall, so this makes a whole lot of difference for me. And overall, the layout feels intentionally designed for long-haul comfort rather than economy, where it's probably the bare minimum and not just squeezing in as many people as possible. So honestly, when I look back at the standard economy configuration later, I was genuinely surprised and struggled to understand how airlines think people can sit in this configuration for 14 or 15 hours in seats that are that small. I'm dreading my flight back. I've got a standard economy seat with American Air, and I think I'm going to struggle, although I have paid for an exit row seat on that, so hopefully fingers crossed for me on that leg. So let's start with what I really liked about this class of flying from Air Canada. The biggest one for me was seat comfort. For someone my size, these seats are excellent. It's a great middle range between paying for a full business class seat, which of course is better. You get a lay flat bed experience, but for the price that was paid on this, it was really quite excellent. I never once felt cramped in the seat. My knees weren't pressed against the seat in front of me. It allowed the people that were in front to be able to recline and not feeling claustrophobic or feeling like my personal space was being invaded. My shoulders had a lot of room as well, and my partner was sitting next to me, and not once did we really encroach on each other's space. And I could shift positions as well in the seat without really disturbing the person next to me, in this case my partner, trying to sleep or trying to do anything. I could actually relax in the seat and not just endure the flight. So actually relax and not worry about how long we had left. The recline is actually quite generous on this seat as well, without being, as I said, without being intrusive to the person that's behind. The person in front of me did recline for most of the flight, and not once was I annoyed or put out by that. And there's foot and leg support, which makes a noticeable difference when you're on that long haul of a flight. I would really recommend, if you're tall, broad-shouldered, a bigger person, or just value your personal space, the seat alone makes a massive reason to consider upgrading to at least a premium economy seat. So the second thing I really loved about this flight, and particular about being in premium economy, I think it actually would have extended to all of the classes, was the customer service. And I'm talking about the ground staff and actually in air as well. They were standout in all aspects. So at the airport, the ground crew were incredibly helpful. We had a couple of questions because we were flying into the United States from Australia. We had questions around our baggage and whether or not we needed to collect that in Vancouver and take that on and recheck that ourselves. All of those questions were answered. The ground crew were incredibly helpful. It genuinely felt like they were going out of their way and taking some extra steps to make us feel like we were special on this flight. It was a Christmas Day flight as well, so it all was a little bit surreal as well, flying on there. Once on board, the cabin crew were again fantastic. They were really attentive. Again, it was a small cabin for premium economy, and I think that we had dedicated air hosts for the premium economy cabin. If we didn't, it felt like we did. So they did a really good job either way. They were friendly and genuinely warm to us on the flight, and I would say that a number of times as we were being served our food or drinks, the cabin crew were willing to have a chat with us, asking where we were going, and they seemed genuinely interested in what we were doing or where we were going, which has been unfortunately unusual on some of the flights compared to some of the other flights that I've taken recently. They really did take the extra time to make sure that we were okay. The human connection on a flight, it actually makes a whole lot of difference. You don't just feel like a number. One of my biggest annoyances as well when I'm flying is when the meal or drink service has been done and wrapped up, and you're waiting forever for your leftovers to be taken away, and so you can sort of get yourself comfortable again. One of my biggest annoyances is when it takes like an hour or half an hour to actually get that done. With this, it was so snappy. I don't think I've actually ever experienced the crew being so attentive that when we'd finished our meal or our drink, I don't think I'd ever have ever experienced them taking so much attention to detail and coming around, making sure that we're okay and making sure that we could get back into a position so we had our trays cleared and we could relax again. So another thing on the list of things that I really enjoyed or was surprised about was the food. Now, as I've mentioned in other videos, I'm a vegetarian and my expectations for plain food are generally pretty low. I guess I just accept what I'm given. But the meals on the route between Sydney and Vancouver were actually exceptional, especially for a vegetarian. I had pre-booked or or let the airline know in advance that I was vegetarian. The flight departed around 11:30 a.m. and so we were served on this flight lunch, dinner, and breakfast. All three were really impressive. The flavors were really good. There's sometimes with vegetarian food on planes, it can be overly salty or just either overly salty or just bland. And this really was able to find that space in the middle, which was fantastic. And the meals, the vegetarian meal really just didn't feel like an afterthought at all. My partner was able to pre-order his food, so he's not a vegetarian. He will eat essentially anything, and he was able to pre-order his main dinner meal in advance. So before we had even left or checked in, through the Air Canada app, and that made that process a whole lot more smoother. It ensured that he got exactly what he wanted in terms of the meal, and that whole process was smooth. But I would need to give a real big heads up to Air Canada. The meal service was incredible, the food was really tasty, and if they're repeating that through their economy cabin and of course through their business cabin, it's standout, and it's something that it needs to be mentioned in this video. So the next thing that I was actually really impressed by was the in-flight entertainment option. I don't know about you, but I've flown a couple of times internationally and for long-haul routes where the in-flight entertainment can be fine and it can be serviceable, but by the end of the experience, you're struggling to find something that you really want to watch. I was really blown away by how much selection Air Canada actually had on their in-flight entertainment. I don't think I would have been able to get through everything I wanted to on 3 or 4 15-hour flights. There was so much there, from a huge range of new movies to some really niche older movies, so some niche horror. I'm a horror fan, and there was some old Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There was some really niche movies in there. So not only the movies, there was a lot of HBO content, there was a lot of Disney Plus content, and there was a lot of just general streaming content, which I really wasn't expecting through the in-flight entertainment. I don't know why I wasn't expecting this, but it really did surprise me, and I never had, I wasn't ever wanting for anything to watch. There was always something there, to the point where I downloaded a number of shows myself on my mobile phone before I left. I didn't need to touch that at all. There was so much on there that I was really entertained and really didn't need to look outside of the in-flight entertainment system and what was being offered by Air Canada. So really big thumbs up there, especially on a flight that's this long. You really do need a whole lot of selection there, and I think there's something to really cater to everybody's tastes, which is really fantastic. And look, I need to give an honorable mention to something that I always find really important on a flight, and something that I think Air Canada have really knocked out of the park on their premium economy leg here, is their power and tech options. So the power options that we had, each seat had a USB-A charging port, which is fairly standard across all economy cabins these days. But the thing that really makes a difference, especially on these long-haul flights and when you're traveling with a portable game device, is the universal international adapter or power socket. It was such a delight to see that this socket was in our seat, and it's what I use for essentially the entire flight. So really big thumbs up there to Air Canada. It's perfect if you have your Nintendo Switch 2, which is what I've bought on this holiday. If you've got a handheld gaming PC, or just multiple devices that need charging, they need a little bit more power than what the typical USB-A can deliver. That international power socket is just absolutely phenomenal, and it makes the flight less stressful, and you can do whatever you need to do. So I was able to play some of my Nintendo Switch 2 without any fear that it was going to run out of battery. I just had it plugged in the whole time, and it was just running off power, which was fantastic. So look, no experience is perfect, and this one certainly wasn't perfect, but thankfully the good things far outweighed the negative things. But I guess the first thing that I didn't quite love, I guess, was the bathrooms. And look, for most flights, and especially most international flights in economy, the bathrooms aren't a great experience. I was probably expecting a little bit more in premium economy. I know when I've flown business in the past, you have a dedicated bathroom and it's usually a little bit bigger and it's a little bit more well serviced with some amenities. In this premium economy situation, there were no dedicated bathrooms, so you weren't able to use the business bathrooms, which I guess is fine. They're for business customers. But we needed to use the standard economy bathroom, which is fine. But the bathrooms are so far away from the premium economy cabin that you had to walk quite a distance to actually get to those bathrooms, and often there would be a line to actually use the bathrooms. For whatever reason, it just didn't feel like there were as many bathrooms on board as what there would typically be on a plane of that size on an international route. So it was really quite surprising. It just meant that there was a little bit of congestion at certain times, especially after meal service. If you timed it okay, then you could get in there without too much of an issue. But there were times that you needed to wait at least 10-15 minutes to be able to actually use the bathroom, which of course is an issue if you really need to go. So something that was, I guess that was just something that was a little bit annoying, something that I would change. I don't know how much you could change that. I don't think maybe a dedicated premium economy bathroom is necessary given the size of the cabin, but certainly something needed to be done in terms of the wait times and how many people were trying to access those bathrooms. There just simply weren't enough, and they weren't as, I guess, they weren't as upkept as much as what I would have expected, which was a bit of a disappointment. But really, when I think about it, that's probably the only thing that that was a little bit frustrating or a little bit disappointing about the flight. Everything else was actually quite fantastic. So as I said before, the good really did outweigh the negative on this flight. So yeah, if it wasn't for the bathrooms, I would have actually said this is probably almost a perfect flight in terms of what we had paid, the class that we're in, and the experience that we'd had. So yeah, overall there wasn't really much that I didn't like about my premium economy experience between Australia, Sydney, and Canada, Vancouver, in the premium economy cabin with Air Canada. The seats, the service, the food, the entertainment, the power options were all phenomenal. And it really all came together to make a very, very long flight, something that was really quite tolerable. And by the end, it didn't really feel like I'd been in that seat for 15 hours, which is always a huge plus. There's a really good tip here though for Australians that are wanting to fly to the United States. There's been a lot in the news lately about how it may be difficult for Australians or anybody to really get into the United States through visa or immigration control. When you fly with Air Canada as an Australian and fly via Vancouver, you actually complete all of your immigration and visa processing in Canada. So you actually essentially enter the US while you're still in Canada. It just makes the process so much smoother, and I would really recommend this for any Australians that may be a little bit nervous about entering the US, but just want to have a bit more of a smooth experience entering the US. It really was such a relaxing experience. We had purchased lounge access in Vancouver as well, so once we got through immigration, we were able to relax in the lounge, in Air Canada's lounge, and it really was such a smooth, trouble-free process going through immigration. Look, I have no doubts that it's probably okay going through most of the main airports in the United States as well. But when we landed in Las Vegas after catching the next flight, it was actually like we just boarded or got off a domestic flight. So we essentially went straight through, there was no customs or no immigration control, and we were able just to collect our bags at the end. So it was really quite a smooth experience, and one that I would highly recommend to any Australians that are flying to the United States. Try and route that through. I would highly recommend Air Canada. And it just, there's that added bonus there of being able to go through immigration in Canada rather than the United States. So I'm somebody that would typically not really consider premium economy, but after this experience, I think if you're somebody that's of a larger size, either tall or wide or just a bit bigger, you value your comfort, but you don't want to really quite pay that business class price, I'm actually a convert. I think that from now on, the minimum class that I will fly is probably premium economy, especially for those ultra long haul flights. It really is, it really makes a lot of sense, and there's no questions for me about the experience and the comfort and just the livability of being in that seat for a long period of time. I'd really rate Air Canada. I think it's probably one of the best long haul flights I've had, hands down. I actually can't remember, other than the times that I've been in business, a better experience long haul. So really big thumbs up to Air Canada there. Not just for the seat, but for the overall and general experience. It was just second to none, really. I hope you found this review helpful, and if you have, maybe give this video a thumbs up or subscribe. That really does help me out. But until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.